Welcome into another edition of the Commitment Issues podcast. I'm Woody Womack, joined on the phone first from Miami by Rob Cassidy and his new cat. Rob, how's it going today?
It's going, Mr. Womack. It's going. How are things in Atlanta?
Oh, it's great. And at work, we're still in a cat-free zone here, so all is well. Nick, how's it going out there in lovely Austin, Texas?
Well, you know, I'm an hour behind you guys right now this morning, so I'm still waking up a little bit. Haven't had my coffee, but I'll try and bring the energy.
Yeah, you know, you two tend to get up early in the morning. I consider 9 a.m. early, which is not a good sign for how my life has turned out. But anyway, we're off and running. Reminder, leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, etc. Contact us, rivalspodcast@yahoo.com. And you can find us on Twitter as well. Send us some questions. Give us some stuff you want us to talk about, some feedback. We got a lot of good stuff last week, so keep them coming. Now, boys, we're really halfway through the football season. I can't believe it. I'm almost depressed because I enjoy the fall so much. But a lot of schools having some early success. You know, programs like Tennessee, Texas A&M, even Nebraska. And I'm wondering, and curious to see what you guys think about this. Do some of these schools that are in the top 10 who have, 20 people in their class, do they start to think, it's time to trade up a little bit? I mean, if you look at the Rivals team rankings, you see a lot of teams that are maybe a little bit lower than their corresponding rank, or they have a lot of guys, at the bottom of the spectrum in terms of 3 stars. Rob, we can start with you. Do you think it's a situation where these schools look to cash in and maybe flip some of these guys that are committed to schools that aren't having such a good year?
Yeah, I think that's definitely always the natural play, isn't it? It's on a team-by-team basis, I think, for the most part. But, you never really can generalize all of these schools into one boat. But I think you'll definitely see some of these Midwestern-based schools especially try to, broaden the reach. I mean, your Nebraskas of the world, they're at their best when they're recruiting nationally, right? But so if they're running the table like this and they're all of a sudden a national name again, why wouldn't you broaden the reach and try to get what you can get and maybe push some of these other guys already in the class that maybe are at the bottom end out?
Well, Tennessee, they have, I believe, something like 15 3-stars committed, which is a high number, or way too high if you ask the Vols fans. But they blame me, not the coaching staff. They blame the rankings. I could see them shedding, five commits and trying to an attempt maybe to trade up. I mean, you look at a guy like T.J. Moore who just decommitted from South Carolina, 4-star offensive lineman in the Rivals 250. I think they're going to target him. He was a big target of theirs earlier. And there's a lot of guys like that floating around. So I know some schools or some fan bases get kind of, locked in. Hey, we got 25 commits. These are the guys that are underrated, et cetera. But I really feel like we're just entering the season where a lot of these kids that have been committed for a long time maybe will end up looking around either because the school that they committed to isn't doing so well and they're having second thoughts, or because, the team that they committed to is doing too well and they may be kind of left out in the cold. So, it's unfortunate for the kids in that situation, but, I guess that's why we need an early signing period, right, guys?
Well, Texas A&M has really been the one, I think with the arrow pointed up in regards to this. I mean, they just hosted a bunch of kids this past weekend for the thrilling victory against the Tennessee Volunteers. A number of guys out there, including 5-star offensive lineman Walker Little and his teammates there from Episcopal. I know, there's varying degrees as to the level of interest maybe Marvin Wilson is showing in the Aggies, depending on who you ask. But with Walker, I wrote a story on him coming out of this past weekend. I know he was excited for the visit. Obviously, the way the game played out, things sort of helped them. They helped themselves, built their case with him a little bit better, and we might see them, jump in. I mean, as far as Texas is concerned, the success that A&M has seen has really helped their case because obviously things are still very much up in the air with Baylor. There's a lot of questions surrounding Charlie Strong. There's definitely a huge opportunity here for A&M to really become the premier team in the state starting this season, now that things have kind of stabilized out there with the Aggies.
Yeah, and the reason why that is probably is because, if you think back a couple episodes at the beginning of the season where everybody was anointing Texas as back and Texas is the best, and your boy sitting right here in Miami, Florida said, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here because I think they still stink. And sure enough, they still stink. I just wanted to self-congratulate myself there.
And the other thing too with Texas A&M is, the kids really love, the recruiting pitches they're getting from their coaches there too. I mean, the energy that some of those assistant coaches bring to the recruitment of some of these kids is a difference maker as well too. I mean, for all the attention that they got in the off season for various antics here and there, something about the way that they talk with the kids and show them around really resonates with them too. So there's as is the case with everything in recruiting, it's never just any one thing, right? It's always a bunch of little ingredients that are adding up to a much bigger picture.
All right, listen, I'm going to go off the grid here. We totally forgot to talk about this. We were working on our rundown. Last week, the NCAA came out with the advisory committee suggesting changes to the National Signing Day situation, adding 2 more signing days, which would put one at the end of June, one in mid-December, which is when the junior college players typically sign. Personally, I'm not in favor of especially the one in June. I mean, it just seems like a disaster with all these kids would be pressured to sign, and then of course, change their mind later, and I feel like it's a nightmare waiting to happen. I've heard some other people say it's better for the kids because, it saves them a spot in case they get hurt. I want to get your guys' take on that. What do you think? I guess we could start with you, Rob. What did you think of this situation, not only from, I guess, the perspective of a recruit, but not only from our perspective in the media, how you think it'll play out?
There's good and bad to it. I'm one that always likes to see college coaches get stuck to them. And I think it would be delightful to watch some of these early offers that they make and don't really mean commit to them early on and then have to deal with it. That's, that would be a great delight to me. But like you said, it's not great to have these kids under the pressure. Not that they're already not under pressure to sign. But it would get worse. It would get a lot worse. And then you'd have kids locked in so early to where, a million different things could happen in that span as far as coaching changes or scandals that we've seen, widespread in college football that would really, really, it would seem that they should logically be let out of their letters of intent. They probably wouldn't be let out if they were locked in. So I'd like to see these early signing periods if it came with a couple different outs for recruits that sign and then everything falls apart and the situation that they signed with does not end up being the situation that they're asked to play for. I think that if you allow, a certain number of outs or a certain number of kind of, plans to get out of these letters of intent, then yes, I'm all for it. But, you don't like to see these kids locked in early when so much can change.
Well, I think every year, and then Nick, you'll get a good taste of this coming up this year. Is this your first full year as an analyst? But I mean, every year I think I call Rob in, late November or early December and be like, why do we even do anything before now? Everything changes because, I mean, once these coaches start to change, once late offers come in, it all changes. And I think that's why that's why you see some of the big time coaches arguing that, they don't want it because honestly, they like to come in at the end and swoop in and maybe steal a few guys. So, Nick, you covered basketball as well. Not at the level we're doing this, but it works in basketball. Do you think it could work for the football players?
The obvious difference between basketball and football inherently is the player pool, right? The amount of talent that's made available, and I think where the difference between football and basketball is for basketball, there's much fewer kids that meet the physical kind of dimensions, measurables that you'd like to have on your team. So the earlier that you can get those guys in on a much smaller roster, the better it is for everybody. With football, there's so many more teams, there's so many more options, and there's so many more roles for kids to play. And the level of exposure is it's a different animal, the sort of exposure that you get as a football player relative to being a basketball player as well. So I mean, it's not really like an apples to oranges sort of thing, but it is two very different situations. And I think as far as football goes, when you're talking about increasing the number of signing days, while that certainly helps some kids, if they don't have that level of exposure that you get from going to the AAU tournaments and playing team ball in the way that basketball does with the big shoe companies like Nike and Adidas hosting those tournaments. You're up a creek, and if classes fill up on you and kids are tied to them, and you just haven't had the opportunity to put yourself out there as a football player like you have as a basketball player, you're the one that's SOL, and that's that can be kind of sort of an undercurrent that might not be considered quite so much when you're talking about adding these signing dates rather.
Look, we all agree that this is going to end up being the haves versus the have-nots, right? It's going to be your Nick Sabans and Urban Meyers and USCs of the world with the facilities and the money and the allure and kind of the mystique that can come in and steal a guy at the end of the period against these other smaller schools that, while they still have nice facilities and everything, kind of rely on their ability to evaluate early and get these kids committed that sometimes they end up decommitting and going to these places like Alabama and Ohio State and USC. Those are the kind of schools that are going to want this. The schools that think they can get an advantage by getting a kid to sign early before he blows up, so to speak, and ends up on the radars of all these other power schools. And usually, experience would say that when it is the haves versus the have-nots don't always have a fighting chance to win the battle, correct?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Well, one thing that Nick mentioned there was the AAU circuit and guys getting exposure or whatever. That's not possible in football unless they change the rules to allow coaches to attend some of these off-season camps and stuff. I mean, part of this was also limiting satellite camps. So now they're actually limiting the number they're limiting the number of players coaches can see even more, and then moving the timeline up. Now, if you let coaches go to camps like the ones that Rivals has or the Nike camps, if you let coaches go to those, okay, I could totally see moving it up because that's a longer evaluation window. But boy, how does it? I just don't think it's going to work. I mean, personally, I enjoy, obviously, it's my job. It's National Signing Day, to have one big day. I think it probably would be easier on us if we had 3 days, throughout the year. It'd probably be better for internet traffic and things of that nature. But from a perspective, I think personally, even for the kids, I think it's dumb. I think now the kids that are enrolling early can sign early, which was a nice addition. But I don't know. And a lot of these stories I read said, well, it's going to pass now. Like it was just kind of a throwaway line in every story. So I guess it's going to pass. That's that. Or Rob, do you think those coaches are going to make a big enough stink that maybe it gets tabled and revisited?
I mean, I don't think it's going to pass right away. I don't think this thing is a done deal. I think that we all know that, Sabans and Myers of the world carry this. They carry some kind of pull in this. They can rally you saw it with satellite camps on the first vote. What do you think happened there? I think when those votes came to pass, there were some good old boy favors done for some of these other coaches. I think it was almost the same vote. It was haves versus have-nots, right? And of course, it ended up getting overturned. But man, I can't see it as a throwaway line because I don't think everybody's for this. I just don't. There's no way.
All right. Well, I'm glad I added that in there so we could talk around it. Now, Rob, I don't know where you've been. You've been crisscrossing the countryside to watch baseball and the like and getting caught in the hurricane. But, right in your hometown, we had the game of the week, Miami and Florida State. Excellent game. Florida State wins on a block extra point, which was really crazy to watch live when it happened, as I assumed it was going to overtime there. My question is now, is this enough for Miami to kind of continue the momentum they have? It seems like the Mark Richt has things turned around, and this is a team that's going to be in a position where it can now compete. We know they just dismissed our boy Sam Bergini, and they also lost a DB commit a while back. I think was his name Chris Henderson. But is Miami in a position to capitalize even though they didn't win the game?
Well, I don't think the loss hurts them. I think they're still seen, like we've talked about so many times on this podcast, recruiting is all about perception and being perceived as either a blue blood or a team with an upward trajectory. And I think that Miami is still seen as a team with an upward trajectory. Everybody thinks Mark Richt has this turnaround. I think it would have helped if they would have won, and I think it would have helped to a lesser extent if they still lose in the same fashion, but everybody still thinks Florida State is good. I think there's definitely questions right now about exactly how good of a Florida State team that was. Like I said, though, that's not going to hurt Miami. I think that, the reputation or the perception is still the same of them. The longer that they get with this kind of mystique of here's a program returning to prominence, they're going to be fine. I think that you'll see it slowly. This isn't something that changes overnight where every kid in the state is rushing to sign with Miami. But I think you're starting to feel the tide turn slowly where people are thinking that it is once again safe again to strongly consider Miami if you're a high 4 or 5-star commit from the state of Florida, where it seemed like for so many years that it was automatically either you're leaving the state to go to Clemson or Alabama or somewhere, or you're signing with Florida State. That seems to maybe be changing slowly. We'll see. I don't think it'll happen this signing day. I think that maybe you'll see a hint of it this signing day. I think next signing day will be the time that we can really judge, how the tide has turned in the state.
Yeah, I think just from the tangibles, the outside perspective, it seems like, they're winning games, they're blowing people out. You lose that game 20-19. It stinks, in terms of it was a heartbreaker, but you had a ton of recruits there. The stadium was full, and upgrading that stadium really helped. I think that's one thing that has cost them is, maybe they don't have the type of facilities that some of these other schools have. The stadium is so far from campus, it's kind of a pain. But to have the fan support and to play a game like that the way they did, and unfortunately for them, their quarterback got a molar knocked out, which was insane to see on TV. But I think they've got a chance to really capitalize. I think, like you said, it may not be this year, and that's what some people forget. The big bump is generally the next season, because by the time you are 10-0 in November, 90% of your class is done, and you're working on next year. So I think, like you said, next year maybe they can reel in a bunch of these guys, especially if they have that Miami attitude back in full force.
Should I read a text message I got from maybe I could give the cliff notes of a text message from a parent that had brought a unnamed player on an unofficial visit there to the game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just so you guys can get the feel. They said it was an electrifying experience. The experience was electrifying on Saturday night. The entire staff embraced us heavily. Hate that they came up short, but they're clearly on their way to being back to being a dominant force. And Coach Mark Richt is an awesome, genuine guy. So if we're talking about pressing the buttons, that it seems like they're doing that. Result aside from this past weekend.
Yeah, there you have it.
Did they say anything about the trash in the parking lot? Boy, Florida State fans are really making a big deal out of how trash the parking lot was. It's so funny. This is the most petty rivalry, and I've been around rivalries that are petty. It is so petty with these two. It's amazing to just watch these fans bicker on Twitter. And Florida State's big talking point is, look how trashy your fan base is. You trashed your parking lot and didn't clean it up.
Yeah, that's what the custodial staff is for, Get out of here. Yeah, it is a lame. There's a lot of lame. As I found out last week on Twitter, there's a lot of lames down there with the inability to come up with a good comeback. So it's not surprising to hear the two of them being uncreative as they go back and forth. Now, Nick, I wanted to talk to you about this. Sam Ehlinger, Texas quarterback commit, hurt his thumb, I guess, out for the season. Already had hurt his knee, right? Or the last time you went to see him?
In the first or second game of the season, he had a situation where he had some sort of, what do you call it, a meniscus problem, similar to a injury that I suffered myself out on the hard fields of adult league soccer here in Austin, Texas. But as you all know, I've rebounded quite nicely, and so did Sam. And he came out there, and his most recent injury is a thumb injury. And my quick understanding of things is that he could potentially be back for the playoffs. The problem with Sam is that he's so much of a some of these kids we come across, and I'm sure you guys have your share of these type of recruits too. They're already in like the polished, big time college athlete, pro athlete mindset where it's like I got to get out there for my guys. I got to be a leader. Play at all costs, and it's like, man, your future's already set for you right now. In Sam's case, he's obviously the crown jewel of Texas's class right now. He's a top 100 player in the country for us. at some point you kind of have to, to weigh. I mean, I understand wanting to have a high school career that you can look back on, regardless of what happens in your college or potentially pro career, and you can say, you know what, I really had some glory days back there, in my high school years and all that. But I mean, at some point, there's got to be a level of perspective. I don't know if that comes from the parents, a coach, one of the recruiting coaches for the school that you're committed to in Sam's case, that kind of says, hey, pump the brakes a little bit. We don't need you, getting too, we don't want too much on the damaged goods sides before you coming out to campus. I mean, we're getting to a point with some of these kids where it's like I said. I mean, it's really they've accelerated their attitude towards getting out on the field, as far as whether it's high school, college, pro, whatever the situation is, the attitude's all the same.
Yeah,
right?
and you mentioned, he's ranked in the top 100, and that's what I kind of wanted to talk about. We have a lot of situations where, you head into the fall, and players who are ranked high have big seasons. I mean, spoiler alert, guess what? If you're the 190th player in the country, and you're a running back, you better have games where you rush for 300 yards. I have fan bases tweeting me stats. It's like, yeah, great. I mean, good. You had 4 sacks, or you're supposed to have 4 sacks. You're the third best linebacker in the country. So, but then we have a situation like Sam's where he's out for the year. How much, I guess, Rob, we can talk to you about this. How much, how do you balance kind of weighing somebody who had a productive senior year with somebody like Sam, who maybe, suffered a few injuries and was out? I mean, I know that we don't have a hard and fast rule, but what's your kind of approach to that?
Well, my approach is that unless it's, a second injury or a devastating injury that is going to impact them going down, I don't really necessarily advocate dropping a player in the rankings for being injured. I don't mind moving guys in front of them. To your point, it is insane. Like, people are, no matter where they're ranked, like, let's say the number 2 player in the country is a running back and rushes for 300 yards. People use that as fuel. Well, he's underrated. Well, he's the number 2 player in the country. Yeah, he's supposed to run for 300. You can just move guys up because they do well in a high school game, and especially when it comes to levels of competition. Like, look, stats mean very little in high school football as far as college projections go, right? I think we can all agree on that. So, it's all about seeing them and seeing the film. And then, of course, those rankings means. Like, everybody thinks that we just, snap our fingers and make a guy the number 1 player in the country. Florida State fans love to yell at me about that. But, it is a process. It is a discussion. It is, a whole thing. Anybody that's ever been on those calls knows that it's not just one man's opinion.
Well, Adam Friedman may disagree with you, but I know.
In Sam's case too, it's a little bit different too, because he's a quarterback, right? I mean, the high level quarterbacks we all know look to commit, at some point during that junior season. He was obviously in the fold with Texas beforehand. I mean, the difference between a kid that's committed and then this past off season, impressed at events like the Elite 11 and the opening thereafter, and so I don't think there was the level of worry as far as what this means for Sam relative to some uncommitted guys, even if they are a highly ranked kid. If a kid's uncommitted and and is still looking at trying to get a few offers, of course, people in his camp, whether it's his parents or coaches or whatever, are going to send us all the stats saying, this kid needs to be, get a boost or a bump in the rankings because he's doing well. In Sam's case, I would err on the side of patience with him, because of the fact that, he's been committed and seemed to have had his situation set up nicely for him, injuries withstanding.
Well, look, he may, the way that some of these high-level quarterbacks are playing, at least in this neck of the woods, he may end up moving up despite being hurt because people are going to move behind him.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where, the Georgia fans have been hammering me on Jake Fromm because he's having a good year statistically. And then he comes out this week and plays a team with several D1 prospects and has 6 turnovers. Now, because he had that bad game, am I going to drop him now in the rankings? No, but I mean, it just shows that, you can't put the cart before the horse there. And yeah, some guys are going to put up big numbers, but, if a quarterback has, if Davis Mills has 1,800 yards passing and someone else has 3,000, it doesn't mean that, they're necessarily a better college prospect. It just means that, maybe they play in an offense where they're allowed to throw the ball more. So I look forward to the December rankings where we're going to get killed. I mean, killed by the fans. So, boy, we got to talk about this. I didn't want to, but we have to. LSU in Florida, they canceled their game because of Hurricane Matthew, and all hell is broken loose. I mean, every SEC fan base is weighed in on it. We saw Butch Jones even come out and complain about it before their game against Texas A&M, which I thought was really weird to suggest, to talk about your team potentially losing 2 games and how it could affect them. We don't know if they're going to reschedule it. I thought it was interesting from a recruiting perspective, though. LSU turned the weekend. They had several visitors come to campus and ended up making it a recruiting weekend. I don't know what Florida did, if some of the kids ended up still making it in or not, especially because the storm wasn't as bad. But from a recruiting perspective, this could be a big loss for Florida. Rob, you and I talked to several kids who were planning on coming for the game. How bad do you think Florida needs this weekend in terms of, it being a showcase for them to several top recruits in 2017 and 2018?
They need to start, looking better playing football games more than anything else at the current moment. But it combined with other things is not going to be great. You hate to lose a home game where you can, especially a big home game like that one, where you can bring in a ton of kids, show the atmosphere off. A game that could have actually probably not, maybe it could have been winnable for them. And so it hurts in that respect. But I don't think it will cripple them as long as they turn it around on the field and start looking like a decent football team. That's, 1A for Florida right now is kind of, after all the expectations it built by the hot start last year under McElwain, this was supposed to be the year it took the next step, and they've kind of stutter started. And I think that's the bigger issue. But when you combine the two things, obviously it snowballs. Like everything else in recruiting, it's a combination of factors. I know we say that over and over and over on this. And I think the reason we do say that over and over on this podcast is because other people out there sometimes make it seem like, everything, you get one big win and all of a sudden every kid in the country is going to commit to you. It's, it's all a combination of things, and it's all subtle. And but those two things combined are not good for Florida. That's for sure.
It's weird to hear these athletic directors and the commissioner kind of going back and forth. It's pretty simple. I mean, the commissioner is just going to have to say what's going to happen, and that's that. I mean, I don't, this is the posturing between these two sides is unbelievable. I mean, it's really become something. I mean, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, Paul Feinbaum, it's fueling his radio show for weeks now. And I don't blame him for talking about it, but at some point, figure it out, adjust the schedule. This whole thing in the SEC about, we can't play 3 SEC games in a row in November. No, that's what every conference does. Guess what? The Big 12, the Pac-12, they play 9 conference games. You play 8. So guess what? Move the schedule around. You shouldn't be playing South Alabama in the middle of November anyway. I got news for you. So, I'm tired. I'm tired of it, especially with, unfortunately, how mediocre the SEC East has looked this season. These excuses about we can't play other SEC teams in the middle of the season. I mean, sorry, it's got to change. So now I'm mad about it. You guys made me mad.
You don't even really need to limit that mediocre comment to the East anymore, do you? Like, that whole league outside of like Alabama and possibly even Ole Miss has looked pretty meh.
Well, it doesn't have. Well, Texas A&M's undefeated still, but the league doesn't have the maybe the depth or the several elite teams at the top that it has in recent years. And I know everyone thinks we're Southeast homers because we live here, but neither one of us is from from the Southeast, so we don't have a problem calling it like
I am.
Well, Rob, Nick, you don't care. You live in Texas. You're not perceived as a homer.
Yeah, look, man, you're out there eating brisket or whatever it is you do. Nobody thinks you're a homer. Everybody here is assuming I'm a Florida fan.
Yeah, have a Diet Dr. Pepper and be quiet, Nick, please. Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, that wraps that up. Let's roll in now to Commitment Issues Conversation. This week's interview, guys, we got some reality TV stars on the horn. Ben and Erin Napier, home improvement experts. We're going to talk a little bit of tailgating and a little bit of Ole Miss football, see what they have to say about that.
Did you ask Ben how to fix my oven by any chance? Or Erin, for that matter? It's really giving me a bunch of crap, so I could use some advice.
They're not appliance repair
they
people. They remodel houses.
Well, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Call Maytag.
They can give you some good recipes for that big green egg you have out back. I know they're high on that thing. So let's listen to them talk to me about stuff I don't know anything about, and then we'll come back to the rest of the show. All right, we welcome in special guests this week, Erin and Ben Napier, joining us on behalf of Bank of America to talk a little football, talk a little bit tailgating and stuff like that as well. How are you guys doing today?
We're good. You doing all right?
Yeah, actually, on my way to Nashville, had to pull off on the side of the road. We're chasing down kids' commitments, as that's that time of year. We're in the middle of football season. First, why don't you guys start by telling us a little bit about what you're doing with Bank of America, and why you had the opportunity to join us today.
So Erin and we're doing all these DIY tips, showing people how to do different little DIY tips. We're the host of HGTV's Hometown, and part of our show is showcasing using projects that anybody can do to really design your home nicely and
save money.
Yeah, and save money, and that's the biggest thing, and that's why most people become DIYers. They're trying to save money where they can, and so Bank of America, they were gracious enough to bring us on board. They thought we'd be a good fit for that, and
yeah, because the Bank of America card, cash rewards card, you get cash back every time you use it to buy the things that you need, groceries, gas. So it was a good fit. We like saving money and getting money back.
Now, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but that commercial you're on airs almost every break between college football games when you're watching on ESPN3. Has that helped you guys' celebrity, or you realize how? I mean, I feel like we've been setting this interview up for 2 weeks, but I've seen that commercial about 100 times during the last few weeks of college football.
We never, ever, ever see the commercials. I don't know, what we're doing wrong. Whatever we watch, it does not feel like we're good candidates for watching Ben and Erin do the DIY tips.
Yeah, and it's funny because,
what it has amounted to is friends we haven't seen in years and years sending us text messages out of the blue, holy cow, was that you on the commercial this time?
My mom, so we filmed this HGTV show, and it was, great, but it was in her mind, it was on par with my nephew learning how to walk or something. It was oh yeah, that's cool. Well, your nephew started walking today. Oh, thanks, Mom, cool. And then she saw the Bank of America card commercial, and then suddenly this was a big deal.
She's really excited.
Now she's pumped.
So our celeb status has increased with our mothers, at least.
Well, like I said, college football fans have seen it a million times. The question is, Ben, did you really have all those trophies that got made into a coat rack, or was that?
I've got a few, but I wouldn't let them use mine.
Yeah, his trophies are somewhere in a box, in our garage. I don't even know how to get to them.
Well, my parents' house, my parents are preachers and they moved around a lot. And so, when I went to college, they moved 3 more times. And so they just quit unpacking my stuff. And so it's boxed up somewhere at their house. So
who knows?
Okay, I was going to say it would have been sad to see those, because I have some old Little League trophies and stuff like that. I don't think I could part with them or watch them get taken apart like that. So you guys live in Mississippi. You mentioned the show you did for HGTV, or maybe you're still doing. You guys get out to the Grove. Are you big Ole Miss fans? I know you guys both went there.
Yeah, so we graduated in '07, and Erin grew up in Laurel, Mississippi, and when we were dating in college, we came and visited Laurel a lot, and so when we graduated, we both found jobs near here, and it was just a really good fit for us to move home, and that's what our show centers around. It's so hometown. It's about our hometown and making a small town. These new people, we're helping them make a small town their hometown. And we do get to go with Ole Miss a little bit. We actually took our production crew up there.
We took a bunch of folks from Canada and LA and New York who have never been to a college football game, but they definitely had never seen anything like Ole Miss, Alabama in the Grove. That was maybe too much for their
I think it was
football experience.
I think it was a little overwhelming. We should have done maybe the Wofford game or something. I don't know. It was intense.
Yeah, you guys, that was a crazy game. I guess Ole Miss didn't come out on top there. But I mean, for someone who doesn't know, we hear the recruits talk about it a lot that they get taken through the Grove. What is a fan maybe who has never been there? What do they need to know about how crazy that atmosphere is and why it makes Ole Miss kind of a special place?
Well, it's the Ole Miss, the Grove at Ole Miss. It's a mecca of tailgating, but there are no tailgates.
Yeah, that was something they were not prepared for. There's literally not a single tailgate. It's chandeliers and tents and big spreads and silver platters and pearls and heels. And so that's hard to prepare people for. They've never seen anything like it before.
And it's best. Erin and I have done it before where we didn't know anybody because, we grew up, in college, we tailgated with our friends in the Grove, but when we first graduated, we didn't know a lot of people who had tents, and it's best to plan ahead to have a few places where you're gonna
home base.
Yeah, some home bases. Yeah, or at least one.
And it's good etiquette to let them know that their tent is going to be your home base.
And so that it's good because it is. It's a lot of places, a lot of people. And, there's a lot that you want to see while you're there. You want to see the Walk of Champions. You want to see the pep rally. But, then you may want to go to the gift shop and get you a shirt or something. But if you have that home base, because it is easy to get lost. We went with 15 people, and so it's easier to lose them, somebody. And we lost a couple, but we found them. Nobody was left behind. But it's nice, to have that place where everybody can meet back up.
You guys have any thoughts on how they've been doing this year? I mean, I know that you went to that game, they lost. They kind of bounced back since then.
Man, I'm telling you, it's a heck of a first half team, ain't they?
Yeah, that was a tough one. Compared to when you guys were in school, though, they've been ranked, around the top 10, top 15. It has to be kind of. You guys got to be a little bit jealous to think that, maybe you missed out on that stuff.
We were there for the Coach O years. Not a lot of victories happened when we were in school. And my dad, bless his heart, he's just like the world's biggest diehard Ole Miss fan, and he just lives for it. Like all year long, he's like a kid waiting for Christmas. He just talks about it and analyzes the people that are getting picked in the draft, and he tells us all about it. Like he strategizes how we're going to beat this team, and this team probably won't beat this one, but if we do, it's okay because we can still win the West. Like he is so fired up about it. And so when they're not doing great, I hate it for Daddy. It just kills him.
Yeah, you'll have to send him over to rebelgrove.com. That's our Ole Miss site, so there'll be a lot of them listening. He might already be over there because they follow that stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure, yeah.
That's what he does on his lunch break every day.
Well, so, just before we get out of here, where can people go to find more information, I guess, about you guys and the show, and then, of course, about, the deal with Bank of America?
Yeah, you guys can visit bankofamerica.com/getcashback.
Or Erin writes a blog every day, and there's a lot of stuff about Ole Miss and tailgating and Bank of America on that. And it's our website, which is erinandben.co, and then her blog is on there, her journal.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here on the Commitment Issues podcast, and we'll be watching the Rebels closely for you as the season moves along.
Howdy, toddy.
Hey, thanks so much.
Now it's time for the tweet of the week.
You subtweet people all the time. You're nothing but an embarrassment.
Rob, you picked this week's tweet. Go ahead and take it away for us.
Yeah, Jordan Griffin's mother, Jordan Griffin is a freshman at Kentucky right now, and we all know things are not going as swimmingly for Mr. Stoops over there in Kentucky as everybody assumed they were. And her name is Judy Griffin, and she tweeted after some fans had gone after him, and Coach Stoops came out in a press conference on Monday and talked about how the toxic attitude doesn't help the team. She added to that and tweeted the following quote: "Stoops is right, 5 exclamation points. This is my son's first year, no way in HELL. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know if I can say that on here. We get reprimanded.
Woody already did that
okay,
once.
No,
so.
There you go. And no way in hell he would have accepted this offer knowing the negativity of these fans. Never, 5 exclamation points. She has since deleted the tweet, but she's been going back and forth with Kentucky fans about the tweet on her Twitter account. I guess my question to you guys is, do we believe this? I think that it's easy in hindsight. Like, we would have never committed here if we knew these fans were this bad. But, I mean, you did, right? Like, everybody knows college football fans are crazy. It's just that the grass is greener on the other side, and then once you are a part of it, it's terrible. I think that you ask any recruit right now, hey, do you know there are fans from your school on Twitter that are mean when your team loses? They'd be like, yeah, I know that. So, I don't know if I believe what she's saying here, but, I understand the frustration.
Well, and what hurts for them is that he really got a ton of interest late in the game, and it could have gone to several schools. He could be at Auburn right now. They elected to go there, and I think what kills them, particularly a DB, is fans maybe tweeting at you directly or blaming you, especially when you're a true freshman out there playing. So, I think. Unfortunately, with in today's social media era, these moms and parents, they end up getting thrown into the spotlight. And we saw Nick Chubb's dad say Nick Chubb wasn't going to play, and then Kirby Smart played Nick Chubb one play, almost as like a message, which I thought was really weird. But that's the situation we're in. Is the parents could go out and talk, and maybe they think they're saying something that's just to their friends and family. Next thing you know, we're talking about it on, with our massive audience.
Wait, so, are you saying that the older generation doesn't understand the internet? Wow.
Well, but it's not just that. I mean, just like crazy knucklehead fans have the right to try and directly reach out to the players themselves with their varying opinions on their performances and whatnot. Parents have the right to sound off and try and defend. I mean, as to whether or not...
Oh, 1,000%. I agree completely. My take was with her saying that we would have never committed here had we known the fans and this negativity. It's like, well, how did you not know this is what happens on the internet? I mean, when schools lose, you went through the recruiting process. At this point, the recruiting process kind of plays out on the internet these days. You see this happen. You know this is a possibility, so don't give me this. We would never have committed here had we known, because you knew and you did it anyway.
I'm going to throw in a quick tweet real fast, as I really, part of our job involves, following several of these prospects on Twitter, which then gives you a chance to witness, teenage interactions, which is a lot different than we were in high school. And our boy Patrick Queen, who's committed to LSU, a linebacker. One of his classmates, a young lady, tweeted, "I love my French class."
Yeah, that's a nice sentiment.
Yeah. See, look, she's happy about. And then what Patrick replies to her, says, "Nobody cares." And then, right, and then she replies back, "You care enough to comment on it." So, yeah, I feel like she got him there. It went on for a couple more tweets, but I really laughed at that, and I can only imagine the kind of trouble I would get in with both sexes if I were in high school, with the ability to tweet stuff about people or make fun of people nonstop, because I already get enough trouble doing it now. So anyway, that wraps up Tweet of the Week. Now it's time for the game of the week. Last week, Tennessee at Texas A&M. We jumped on the line when it was Texas A&M minus 6.5, and guess what? Ding, ding, ding. We all hit. I got Rob's pick off the air, Nick, just to be sure. Nick now 3-2 on the year. Rob and I 4-1. So if people were actually listening to our picks and then taking our advice, they'd be doing pretty well. So guess what? We're riding with Tennessee again this week. Alabama at Tennessee, and guess what? As of this podcast, Alabama a 13-point favorite. Let's start with you, Nick. That's a big spread. That's a whole lot of points out there. What do you think?
That is tough. It's a tough road game. Tennessee's feeling the burn after this past week. A little downtrodden, I imagine, after coming in and playing in a big environment here in College Station and taking the L. Man, you guys go first. It'd come back to me.
All right. Go ahead. You go first, Woody.
Yeah, I'll go first because, first of all, you mentioned that was a heartbreaking loss for Tennessee. They had several injuries, and I think that has a lot to go, into this. We mentioned last week kind of being a body blow game with them taking a lot of hits and maybe not being able to stand up. It was a crazy game last week. Tennessee's just got some they got some crazy luck. Things have been going their way. It's been one of those years, and guess what? I'm going to take them to cover that spread, and I think there's a good chance that they could win this game just because they got that X factor. And last year's game against Alabama was very close. That was at Alabama. I feel like Tennessee, maybe they found something in Alvin Kamara. He had a great game, so I'm taking the Vols to cover that spread. Rob, what do you think?
Boy, oh boy, I will take strong, fast, deep athletic players over whatever X factor is any day of the week. I got Alabama to cover this thing in the Rob Cassidy lock of the week. I think they win by at least 17. I don't think it's close. Tennessee has gotten so many breaks. Tennessee is a good football team. Tennessee is not at the level of Alabama yet, and as far as talent goes, so I think Tennessee's X factor perishes to Alabama's big, strong, fast guys, and I got the Tide to cover.
All right, Nick, what do you got?
What was I think I'm going to go with Alabama too. What was their score last week when they went to didn't they play at Arkansas and beat them by a couple of scores?
Yeah, I know there was a lot of people were picking Arkansas.
A lot of people were picking Arkansas to cover or win outright. Alabama went in there and hushed the masses. I think they can do it again this week, after surviving similar circumstances last week. So I'll go with Alabama as well.
Okay, so we got some varying picks here. This is a chance to maybe mix things up. Alabama won by 19 last week at Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it. So, all right, now we move on. Rants and recommendations, back and better than ever. And boy, we got a lot of rants on the old rundown this week. Not a lot of wrecks. Anybody want to start us off with something positive? You guys got anything?
No, I don't have any recommendations. I haven't had much positivity in my life between flying to New York to watch the Mets lose in a 9-inning game. Anything else? Nothing good has happened to me. I'm just upset at the world.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't really have a whole lot of recommendations either. I mentioned Allie's Cookies last week, which has become my favorite place to eat in the entire world, which is not good for my health. Nick, you got anything out there in old Texas?
I guess maybe what I'll do is I'll just tell a story. It's not really a rant or a recommendation so much as just a personal experience, and then I'll let you guys say whatever you want to say. As many people know, the past 2 weeks here in Austin City Limits, the famed music festival, several headlining acts, most notably Kendrick Lamar was somebody a lot of the kids were excited for. I wasn't there for that weekend. I went on the final day, this past Sunday there. One of the acts, of course, the immortal Willie Nelson, who many people were very excited to see.
Willie Nelson at a music festival. I bet there were no drugs at all at that thing.
The air was thick with varying aromas. I won't speculate as to which kind, but anyway, so he comes up on stage. Everybody's the crowd is raucous. Everybody's waiting to hear him play and all that, and I was too. It's really cool every time you see somebody that you've seen for. I mean, I'm 31 years old now. I spent a significant part of my life, seeing him in magazines, TV shows, pictures and the like. And, it's always cool when you spend that much time seeing somebody, knowing they exist, but then actually seeing him in person. From that point of view, things were very cool. But guys, I don't know, man. It might be time to hang up the guitar for old Willie. As far as, I mean, there must have been 6 people as part of his band, and every single person playing an instrument seemed like they were on their own agenda. Like the whole thing was really just just a separate. It was a collection of individuals, and Willie was leading the way, and it was cool to see him. He still has some twang in the fingers to play the guitar, but when it's not really syncing up with the other 5 members of your band, it was a little difficult to swallow on some level.
Man, I've got a feeling this is going to offend our southern listeners, and maybe not offend, and maybe even you guys too. But everybody has blind spots in the world, right? I don't think I know a Willie Nelson song. Like I'm sitting here trying to think of one. And
come on, On the Road Again. Get out of here.
Okay, see, I do know that song, but I did not know that Willie Nelson. I did not know that was a Willie Nelson song.
Well, the thing with Willie is one of these old school, country folk singers from way back in the days. There's really a collection of songs that they all play in their own style. So I mean, there were a lot of recognizable songs that he played. that you would have heard varying artists perform. But
when I think of Willie Nelson, I think of like, I'm sure there are a million times I've been in some like seedy dive bar somewhere and a Willie Nelson song has come on the jukebox and I know it and I tap my foot to it, but I never have identified it as, hey, that's Willie Nelson. He just sounds like every other dude that's like Willie Nelson adjacent.
Okay, all right, boy, you're right. I'm mad at you about all these comments, and I don't even like Willie Nelson that much. I think he has a unique sound. I'm always with you, Willie. I know when Nick and I made our road trip to move him to Austin, we listened to Willie Nelson several times on my road trip soundtrack to keep us awake in our 20-hour voyage. I got something to complain about. Speaking of, Rob Cassidy recently got a cat, as we've mentioned several times. What's the name of the cat, by the way, Rob?
Shea. It's named after the old stadium at Citi Field.
I thought you said Che, like Che Guevara. Which would be interesting. That'd be a really cool cat name. Anyway, so Nick and I got talking to this on the phone yesterday. People who make social media accounts for their animals, what's wrong with you? Like, where did you go wrong? If you sit down and I'm sure your wife Rob has taken a lot of pictures of this cat, which is fine. Cats are cute, but if she starts an account for the cat and then tells other people to follow, hey, you got to follow Shay on Instagram. It's really funny. As I believe one of Nick's friends recently told him about a dog.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, this is a widespread thing, right? Like, I've seen this. Like, and I have never seen. Obviously, I don't have an Instagram, but people have Twitters for their animals. I've seen these; they exist. It's very strange.
Well, the Twitter's even worse. As I told Nick yesterday, if the cat could actually take your phone and tweet, okay, I'm in. If it taps with its paws and could write stuff out, I'd be really impressed with that. But for you to be so insane that you talk and ooh, I'm a kitty. I like, whatever. You're insane. You go into Woody's mental institution program, which is, we'll save that for a whole other episode. But I think you have mental problems.
That podcast would get you fired.
Yeah, I think you have mental problems at that point, and it's time to see a therapist or something. And Nick and I used to work with a girl down at the Naples Daily News, and I believe she's got one for her turtle, she's got one for the dog, she's got one for the cat. I mean, she's got T-shirts with the cat on it. It's not working, people. You gotta stop. I can't. I'm so mad now between you talking about Willie Nelson and now me thinking about people's cats having Instagram.
No, hold on, going back to the Willie Nelson thing, I'm not like saying that Willie Nelson is bad. I just don't. I'm not familiar with like names of his songs. Like I just it's like a blind spot.
All right, go ahead, Rob. You're complaining now about whatever you want to complain about.
I'm not really complaining about it as much as it's like I'm a little uncomfortable with the whole Ken Bone phenomenon from the presidential debate, where if you're not familiar, and I'm sure you are, if you live anywhere near the internet, this balding gentleman in a off-brand red sweater appeared to ask a question about the environment, and he kind of caught on as a meme, which tends to happen. But I feel like there's an underlying and everybody is, oh, this guy's the greatest guy in the world, blah blah blah. But I feel like there's this undertone of kind of mean-spirited, we need to ask ourselves, why have we made this guy a meme? Why is everybody obsessed with this guy? And I think it's because of the way he looks. And I'm not sure it's a very positive thing, the way that people are, or at least kind of the connotation of why that's happened. And I'm a little uncomfortable with how mean-spirited it's been. But nobody will come right out and say, hey, we're laughing at this guy because he's bald and overweight. But, I mean, really, that's what's happening, right? Like, that's the reason he's a meme.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get I don't want to get too much into it for fear of us veering into political grounds, but I have a feeling that, if maybe one of the candidates were making fun of him the same way social media is making fun of him, there would be outrage instead of laughter. So, it's lame. The whole point is it's corny. It's not that funny, which, like you texted me the other day, Rob, that it's the Sharknado of this election or whatever, and I agree. It's just like, so you're trying too hard, cool, the guy's a nerd, congratulations, we don't have to make fun of him. And he's got, he seems to be enjoying it. He told a story about how he was supposed to wear a suit and he was so fat he ripped through the pants. And I mean,
No,
it's kind of
good for
depressing
him
for
for
me,
capitalizing on it. I was gonna say, there's a level of responsibility for the public. There's a level of responsibility to yourself. If you know you're gonna make yourself a target by going on national television and looking the way that you look, that's on you. That's on you.
Yeah, that's on you, Coach. By the way, I was watching Last Chance U last night, and Rob, I don't know if you watched it. Nick, you watched it already, correct?
I watched it.
A little bit. I don't know how I feel.
I've seen it.
Well, so anyway, the first episode, the D-line coach is really getting on this guy, and the coach let it be known that if the player didn't do well, it was on him, and the coach even said, "That's not on me." So,
Man, if coach says
out,
it's not on him, then it's really on you.
Yeah, that's
because coach will always put it on him if he can.
No, not this guy.
Unless he's Brian Kelly, who would never put it on him.
Yeah, exactly. No, not Brian Kelly or Mark Helfrich. Mark Helfrich also having some issues with the blame game. When we can talk about that next week, we got plenty of time to talk about those teams being bad. That wraps it up. Boy, hey, Rob, you missed last week's episode, but we continue to get music submissions for people wanting me to play their music on the show. So, but guess what? We're loyal to M. Deuce here. Follow him on SoundCloud. He's got all kinds of, I don't know, what's the term to refer to beats? Fresh? What do the kids say, Rob?
Oh, brother.
Yeah, boy, let's just cut this.
M. Deuce has that fire we've been looking for. That's what it says.
Fair. There you go.
That's what it says right there on his own page. So big shout to him. His Oregon State Beavers getting a big win. I know he was in the house for that one. I saw a lot of videos on Facebook. And just another reminder, please hit us up, leave us a review, subscribe. We want to see these numbers keep going up. So that wraps it up this week. We'll be back with another episode next week and perhaps a bonus interview later on the week if anybody will return our phone calls. Thanks a lot for listening.